Cool, cool. So I figured I wanted to start with some updates. So Malaysia established a 1 million hectare marine park, um, which is now the biggest marine protected area in the country. They are calling it, and once again I botch names, the Tun Mustafa Park, or a TMP. So it's roughly about 2.47 million acres of what's called seascape, and it's off of the Sabah province in Borneo. Um, and that's really important because that area contains the second largest concentration of coral reefs in Malaysia, and along with very productive fishing grounds, seagrass beds, mangroves, and it's home to a lot of people who rely on it as a resource. So commercial fishing to artisanal fishing, and this area is called the Coral Triangle bioregion. Um, so the environmental protection must be balanced with the need of coastal populations. And this is 13 years in the making. So it was 13 years of planning and negotiations and consultations, and was finally established. And the plan satisfies both local and commercial interests and is cared for in an ecologically sustainable way. So it uses a mixed approach to marine conservation, where local communities in the fishing industry can fish, but only in designated zones that they actually helped choose, with kind of the Malaysian government and some NGOs. So this is very important because you don't want to choose the places for people to fish if you don't know anything about it. So by giving the fishing industry say in where they can fish, it's like extending an olive branch. So this mixed approach is very like important, and we're seeing more and more of it. And what else is important is this area has a lot of biodiversity, but also a lot of kind of species of hard corals, species of fish, endangered dugongs, endangered green turtles. So, and when it was last studied, the coral was found to have excellent or good 50%, 57% of the coral reef were in excellent or good condition. Although they did find that there was evidence of like negative human impact. So in this area, blast fishing is very popular, which is exactly what it sounds like. In fact, they noted that when they were studying the coral, they heard at least 15 bombs go off. And so that is exactly what it sounds like, is they use bombs to catch fish. And so fishermen get a hold of unexploded dynamite, or even homemade bombs that you can kind of make from anything in your house. And they're very easy to make, and they are very cheap to make. So you pretty much throw the bomb in and the dead fish float to the top, and then you kind of like sweep, and then you have fish. But they, break coral reefs, which is bad. So they've outlawed blast fishing in the entirety of the park, especially in those where fishing is still available. So it's very important. It's a great step in the right direction for Malaysia and for the 10% goal. What was interesting to me is the Huffington Post, literally just yesterday, has a blog called What's Working, and the theme of this blog yesterday was uniting to protect 30% of the ocean by 2030. which is actually what was suggested in 2014 at the IUCN World Parks Congress. They suggested that at least 30% of the ocean be closed to all activities in a network of connected marine protected areas. So it kind of, a lot of people think that SDG 14 came out of nowhere, but it's been talked about for at least 2 years. And SDG calls for 10% by 2020, which is quite a lot less than what was recommended in 2014, but still we see it as a step in the right direction. So in 2015, we saw over 2 million kilometers squared of ocean protected, which is an area about 10 times the size of Central America. And when this is fully established, because of course it's not like you clap your hands and then a marine park appears, this will bring us up to 6%. So we just are waiting for kind of the finalized implementation. So that's great. And like I said, it's interesting that this was just yesterday on Huffington Post, the blog. So, and a study that was released on smart investments in ocean health makes a really strong economic case for expanding marine protected areas globally, and cites that they could yield net benefits between 490 and 920 billion by 2050, which is like an insane amount of money to me. Maybe it's because I just got out of college. Who knows? So, and it mentions how in September of 2014, President Obama expanded the boundaries of the Pacific Remote Islands Marine National Monument, which more than doubled the amount of U.S. waters that are highly protected from the 6% to 15%. So the U.S. itself is already halfway to that 30% goal by 2030. So it is, we're seeing a lot of progress, which is great. And I love in this blog, the last sentence: we need to unite and work together to turn our 30 by 30 ocean vision into reality, to become the regeneration generation. I was like, oh, I want that on a shirt. I want that on a pin. Like, can we make that like a motto for MCC, to become the regeneration generation?
It needs to be a bumper sticker.
Yeah, like, I like that so much more than like millennials or like whatever else they call us. Like that, what does that even mean?
No one knows. No one knows. What's the blog name again?
It's Huffington Post. It's called HuffPost Impact, and the theme is what's working. I can send you the link.
Yeah, in the group chat, that'd be great.
There you go.
Oh, beautiful. Okay, I will include that.
Yeah, and the person who wrote it is a former Environmental Protection Agency administrator and former director of the White House Office on Energy and Climate Change Policy.
Oh, okay.
Which makes it even more like amazing to me, because it's not like some high schooler or someone writing it. She knows what she's talking about. She's legit. So, and then there is this marine protected area, Musquash, in Canada. And it was suggested that it should be expanded by this person. His name is David Thompson, and he was a central figure in creating this marine protected area. And he is a naturalist and is the former Fundy Baykeeper of the Conservation Council of New Brunswick. And he wants to see the protected area boundaries move to the west, so expanding it. And what's really interesting about this marine protected area is that it also is an estuary, so it kind of goes from water to partially on land. and kind of has that very important mixing of saline and fresh water. So in estuaries, we see a lot more biodiversity. And he's once again a big proponent for setting aside 5% of Canada's oceans as marine protected areas and the overall 10% by 2020. And Canada has agreed to the commitments outlined in the Convention of Biological Diversity, which occurred in 2010, but has only protected 1.3% of their waters as of now. So they kind of could use this expansion because they did agree to kind of fulfill that goal. So it's a good news. Good news. Just kind of waiting for it. Let's see, what was next? Let's see if this wants to load. Okay, I'm gonna do a screen share. Share screen. Can you see it?
Yes. Manga Bay.
I'm gonna make it bigger. Let me see how to make it bigger. Okay, so this is a really cool photo series. The people of Indonesia's marine protected areas. So this was like, because I talk a lot about it, but it's nice that someone actually decided to do a photo series about it. So this first picture is a scientist studying a hawksbill turtle, and the scientist is from the World Wildlife Foundation, and they've been working to protect the endangered turtles, which is actually very difficult for this area because one of the main sources of economic welfare is seaweed farming. Unfortunately, that's what these turtles eat. So the turtles are in direct competition with the locals. So they've been not only studying the turtles, but also trying to promote alternative livelihoods. This is a crab fisherman, and this is World Wildlife Foundation Indonesia, and they are working with the crab fishermen to set up sustainable harvest guidelines, but also to keep data so they know the size of the crabs that they're catching, how many males, females, so kind of this idea of citizen science, which we're going to touch upon in a couple of minutes. This is one of my favorite. This is a local fisherman free diving for sea cucumbers, which are very popular in Chinese communities and are very highly valued, which I think is interesting because I personally have interacted with sea cucumbers and they're kind of gross to me, but like that's just me. I don't know. But free diving is very difficult, but because these people learn so early, they're like fantastic at it. It's insane. It's like superhuman. This is a sea anemone with clownfish, and this was taken at the Salat Dampier marine protected area, which like I just see Marlin and Nemo in their home right now from Finding Nemo, but that's just me. And this is the Papua region of Indonesia. And you can actually see in the corners the coral that's kind of been bleached. So this coral reef is kind of in the midst of degradation, but we're hopefully going to see it come back because it's in a marine protected area. So you can it's interesting to see the colors, but then kind of on the border, the white of bleaching. These are kids playing at the beach. This is right near a marine protected area. This is another seaweed farmer. His group, his kind of company, has agreed to stop harvesting the hawksbill turtle eggs and seaweed. And seaweed farming is offering a more sustainable alternative because they'll also take the eggs and sell them. It's a little baby turtle. I just like this picture because look at how tiny it is. Like,
That's crazy.
oh my god. I'm over here, like, once again, like, I just imagine, like, giant turtles, and then I see a picture like this, I'm like,
Wow.
it's so cute. Here's a focus group with fishers. So I personally really like this picture because I think a lot of people have this preconceived notion that scientists go out into the field, take the data, and leave. But a big part of gathering data is not only the numerical and what a lot of people think is the hard sciences, but also talking to fishers and locals, because ultimately they know way more than we do, or that the scientists do. So having this kind of focus group really is beneficial for the fishermen, for the scientists, for the environment in general. This is a town in Key Islands, and it's a woman selling fish at a market. And villages are being studied for information on political jurisdiction, proximity to fish markets, and ethnic composition. So once again, it's kind of taking a step back from what people assume scientists are studying. This is some of the fish that she has for sale. This is one of the 3 Kigs of Key Besar, which is a small island in Maluku. And he's explaining what's called SASI, which is Indonesia's traditional system of research management, to the research team. So if you can combine SASI, their traditional system, with contemporary conservation approaches to kind of not only make it more palatable to this village or to communities, but also kind of it can inform the scientists. It's like a tit for tat kind of thing. So listening to how have they done it for thousands of years and how are we doing it, and finding compromises or even discovering new things that they do that maybe never occurred to the scientists. So, and that's the last of the pictures. It was nice to see a different kind of approach to marine protected areas, because once again, like, I'm so used to reading the articles and kind of trying to like slog through that, but to see like really nice pictures and kind of have a new face to it. It was nice. It was nice for me to see. So on June 8th was World Oceans Day. This, in my opinion, should be like a national holiday, but you know, that's just me. A lot of different organizations, of course, talk about it. Save Our Sharks, World Wildlife Foundation, Ocean Conservation. I saw kind of like articles all from like local newspapers, kind of giving oceans their little like moment to shine. The U.S. State Department released a statement about it, UNESCO, the UN, USA Today, Surfer Magazine. It was nice to see it on the forefront. But in my opinion, this was the coolest thing. I have to share it. Hold on.
Hi, Austria.
Oh, advertisement.
Here's the plan. You're a financial company that cares, but your logo is old and a little pointy. So you evolve, you simplify. You haven't changed, you still help people live their best lives. And finally, your new logo is ready, and you decide the perfect time.
It's me, Ellen DeGeneres. As you may know, I'm a big fan of your beautiful, great, wonderful, Great Barrier Reef, which is home to my favorite fish, Dory. And as you may remember, but Dory probably doesn't, she's a blue tang and has many other amazing species that live in the reef with her. It's critical that we protect this amazing place, and we'd like your help. Just check out the instructions attached to this video. Help us help Dory. Just keep swimming, just keep swimming, just keep swimming. Huh. Oh. Huh.
That's so cute.
So yeah, Ellen released a short video with Remember the Reef, which is a campaign that was launched to kind of coincide with Finding Dory. So, and it was meant for obviously Australia, the home of the Great Barrier Reef. So that was really cool. And actually, a lot of people don't know this, but Disney Australia has been working with Disney Conservation to kind of help with conserving the reef. And so it's part of the 20th anniversary and the new initiative aimed to reverse the decline of the coral reefs and the different species that live there. So a lot of people don't know about that. But yeah, Disney actually does work with some conservation organizations. So and also definitely go see Finding Dory because I'm really excited for it. Let's see. What next? Okay, cool. So one of the things that I wanted to touch upon in this meeting was ecotourism, because it's summer, and so I know a lot of people are going away, going to the beach, going overseas, and I personally am seeing a lot more kind of ecotourism minded programs and vacations, and it's interesting because it's not just oceans based. Ecotourism is a million different things. So in case anyone didn't know, ecotourism is officially defined as tourism that sends people to relatively untouched parts of the world and that is sensitive to the impact to nature caused by humans. Ecotourism is an attempt to allow tourism that does not damage nature or traditional culture. So it's this, and then the best is in this definition, it is an idea that has massive appeal as those with money can now visit places in good conscience, which is very true. It just sounds a little bougie to me. That I just imagine like someone like a queen or like a lord and lady, like, oh yes, now we can visit and not feel bad about the little people who live in this country. Like, that's just what I imagine. That's just me. Ecotourism has actually been around since the 1980s, and it is the fastest growing sector in tourism. It grows every year by 10 to 15%. And the UN thinks that it will soon account for 25% of the entire tourism, like, economy. So, and tourism, it's interesting because tourism, from an economical standpoint, is a very safe bet. It's one of the few sectors of the world economy that continues to grow despite whatever is happening in the world economy. So it's kind of a safe bet. People really love the word eco in front of anything, so ecotourism has like a lovely ring to people. But there are pros and cons, like with everything. But so some pros of ecotourism is it is more concerned with the environment, and it encourages developers to build with a lot more consideration to the environment and to the culture. So, and this is supposedly, like, am I really going to question if the log cabin I'm in was sustainably harvested? No. But the theory is that developers will kind of take a little more thought into it. And it's another advantage, which is kind of it's one of those that could go either way. Ecotourism provides an income for locals in the area. So it's the argument for this is that local people can show tourists around jungles, lakes, savannas, and this is a new opportunity rather than mass fishing or poaching. So showing the people a rainforest rather than logging it is a good compromise, because you can show 1 million people the forest, but you can only cut down the forest once. And it's good for the people experiencing ecotourism because it gives them a new perspective. It kind of gives them a significance to the land and to the local and indigenous people, kind of overcoming prejudice and understanding the issues at hand in a place that isn't their own. There are some cons, of course. The idea that we can go anywhere as long as we're like nice to the environment is kind of frowned upon. A lot of environmentalists think that some parts of the world should just be like straight up off bounds. So for the one thing that they cite is if you're an ecotourist scuba diving, you could be as careful as can be, but if you accidentally break a piece of the fragile coral, like you have made your mark. So, and also like if you're in a forest and you're very respectful to the forest, but your eco hotel is there, well, there's a problem there. And one that they cite quite a lot is safaris. A lot of ecotourism includes safari adventures, and what they're noticing is that the jeeps in the savannah scare off animals that the lions kind of rely on catching. So now these lions can no longer hunt in these parts when the tour jeeps are out. And this has kind of a loop, because if you're in a tour jeep, chances are you want to see a lion, but you can't see a lion because you're in a tour jeep. So, and there's also a lot of indigenous rights that are kind of being looked over. One example is in Kenya, the Maasai people have been moved out of their traditional lands because of the demarcation of national parks for ecotourism. So they are settled on the lands next to the reserves. And much of the lands next to the reserves have gone to ecotourist operators and non-local people. So they're kind of being forced out of their home for the kind of ecotourist sector. So, and of course, like now we see a lot more concerns about health between like Ebola and the Zika virus. There are concerns that we have a lot of people traveling to and from these areas. If you're in a large group and you catch something, it's more likely to spread. And when you come home, there's that kind of concern. So not only is it economical and environmental, but it's also health related. In my opinion, I think ecotourism is a good idea to a point. I think everything has pros and cons. I just think that we need to kind of think more before we say, yeah, ecotourism is like the next best thing. It's like the best thing since sliced bread. So, thoughts, opinions on this?
Yeah, I mean, being from like Hawaii, obviously ecotourism is everywhere. Like, I participate in it so Hanauma Bay is like a big attraction for snorkeling. It draws in, I think, like millions of visitors. And as far as I can tell, there haven't been a lot of red flags. Like, I don't think the huge amounts of people coming in is severely threatening the bay, but also I don't have all the information. Like, there could be a lot happening that they just don't tell us about. But I know that before you're allowed to enter, you have to watch like a 15-minute video on just like etiquette almost.
Mm-hmm.
Like, don't step on the coral even though you're tired and you want to rest. Like, remember that they're living things. And I don't know how effective that is. So I'm wondering like how they can make that more effective. But I can see all these things put in place to kind of protect the area.
Mm-hmm.
But I wonder like how much it's actually doing. And it's like I can see how, because it's such a big revenue generator, that they wouldn't ever want to reveal the fact that it may be being severely degraded. So
I always get the feeling almost like a Blackfish vibe
yeah.
of like deceit. Like SeaWorld didn't come out and say like, hey, we're making really good business and we have a lot of tourists, but we may or may not be like abusing our animals. Like, I feel like the ecotourism sector wouldn't say like, hey, this is a bad idea. Maybe we shouldn't do this.
Yeah. And it's funny because like I think out of all the types of tourism,
Mhm.
this is like one
Sorry.
where people say, they frame it as like you're doing this place a service by participating in this kind of tourism.
Mhm.
Which is kind of interesting. It's like I think they take advantage of people's like fear of doing harm. So I think it's like maybe we should just embrace the like worries people have about like we should embrace the fact that people might be uncomfortable going into a place and just like digging around, or instead of trying to like placate them, just be like, oh no, it's fine, we're doing all this. Maybe instead we could be like, no, yeah, let's like think about this, and after we talk about it, then you can decide what you want to do. But that is the worst moneymaker ever. Like, if I pitched that to a business person, they'd be like, please
Please leave.
yeah. So I don't know, like, is it inherently like incompatible, or I don't know. Oh, I have a question for you. Like, what's been the best? Like, has there been a place you've gone to where you're like, oh wow, they like have a good handle on this, or like they're doing a good job, like a good model for ecotourism?
I think so. I think my best experience, and it's interesting because it's not particularly ecotourism, but it is very eco-minded. I got to visit this place called the Salad Trail in Israel, and it is a completely off the grid, I guess you could call it, farm in the Negev desert. So, which isn't kind of what you would think to have in a desert, in the northern Negev. So it is it was created by this agricultural agronomist, Yuri Elon, and they grow vegetables, they grow fruits. All of their water that they use is kind of rescued water from Tel Aviv, and it's really meant for tourists and school groups, and so it isn't something that like the locals would ever kind of go to, I guess you could say. But to be in the desert and see greenhouses and fields and orchards and all grown without pesticides and with recycled water, it was amazing to see. So I guess that would probably be the best example that I can kind of relate to, especially because without the tourists coming to visit, he would struggle to keep the farm running. He sells his fruit to local markets and he sells his vegetables, but the tours and he has a little shop so the tourists can go and buy like fresh, honey and teas and everything, and spices that are all grown literally around the corner from where you're shopping. So that, I think that was definitely the best one I've ever done. So if you ever find yourself in the Negev desert, I suggest checking it out in case you ever find yourself there. And they also, and I didn't know this until kind of doing more research afterwards, but they've done corporate events, school groups, senior citizen tours, bar and bat mitzvahs, all on the farm. So it's a very popular thing. It's a very popular place. So definitely that.
That's crazy. I mean, I'm very, very into like agriculture kind of stuff. So you never know. I may make it there someday.
I was just like, I remember being amazed that I was standing in the Negev desert in Israel, picking a kumquat off of the tree and eating it. Like, who does that? Who does that? It was insane. And like, we went into the greenhouses and like a million different types of peppers and like 15 different types of tomatoes. And he was like, yeah, just pick one off and like taste it. So I'm standing in the desert in a greenhouse, like taking a tomato off the vine and eating it. And it was like the best tomato I've ever had. I was just like, what is this? So
yeah, that's the thing. It's like the best tasting food, I think, happens to be the most sustainable.
oh yeah.
It's just that
Either
way.
that or something that you make yourself. Like it could be like the worst tasting food if you make it yourself, but the fact that you made it
Yeah.
makes it taste amazing. Like makes it taste amazing.
Mm-hmm.
So let's see. Also for World Oceans Day, I found this interesting. The IB Times released the 5 biggest threats to sea wildlife and coastal economics. So, and I believe this is the International Business Times. So it's to hear from a very non-environmental organization what they think the top 5 threats are. And the number one that they listed was plastic overload. Which, not surprised, in 2014, 5.25 trillion pieces of plastic garbage were found to be in the ocean, which weighs roughly about 269,000 tons. That's a lot. And this is 2014. So our plastic consumption has just increased.
Yeah.
It's been found that by 2050, it's expected that 99% of the world's seabird species will suffer from plastic ingestion. So this is everything from like seagulls to penguins to albatrosses. Right now we're at 60% of seabirds, which in the 1960s, this was like a fraction of 1% had found plastic in them. So this kind of sudden jump and such a drastic jump is terrifying. They also listed warming waters as one of the biggest threats that they can find. Hold on. This is going to start talking. I hate the talking thing. Cool. We're done. So we see that global average temperatures are steadily rising. This is a mixture of causes, blah, 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 greenhouse gas emissions, blah, 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 sea surface temperatures. It's pretty much what I expected this to be number one, but that was just me. Thank you. And of course, there's the idea that coastal communities are at risk because as we see the Arctic sea ice melting, this causes sea levels to rise, which puts the coastal communities at risk of storm surges and flooding. Also, the melting ice can affect wildlife. So, like walruses like to hang out on ice sheets, but if there are no more ice sheets, the walruses don't have anywhere to go. Number 3 was called acid test. which is, of course, the acidification of the oceans, which, as we know, kind of affects the coral reefs, and making the water more acidic makes marine life have to struggle to live. What was interesting is the U.S. coastline is already suffering the effects of this acidic water, and they reference a shellfish company based in Washington. They saw that millions of the oyster larvae die in the hatcheries, and the seedlings die or are struggling to grow, and this is because of the acidifying waters. So even though this is something that we talk about quite a lot, in the future, it's happening now. Number 4 is toxic blooms, which is a huge issue on Long Island, where I lived for pretty much 10 months out of the year. Not only does this kind of harmful algal bloom take oxygen out of the water, but also threatens drinking water supplies. There's a lot of different reasons that these toxic blooms occur. A lot is because of fertilizers that wash into the surrounding waterways, because these fertilizers kind of provide the perfect growth mechanism for algal blooms. Industrial scale agriculture, which is producing industrial scale manure, which finds itself into the water, kind of oversaturated sewage system. There's a lot of different reasons why it's happening, but it's happening. And these blooms are not only harmful to the environment, but also harmful to humans. There's been several beaches that I know of on Long Island that kind of have been closed or have been kind of closed off to the public because of harmful algal blooms, or HABs, as we call them, harmful algal blooms, HABs. And number 5 is oil spills, which, not surprised. People are still suffering from the Deepwater Horizon disaster in 2010. The oil gets into the water, and it pretty much wrecks the water and wrecks fishermen and business owners, and it affects tourism. It affects the marine creatures. We've all seen the Dawn commercials, I'm sure, where they're washing the birds off with Dawn that have been in the oil spill. A 2015 report from the National Wildlife Federation found that the marine creatures off of Louisiana, where the Deepwater Horizon disaster occurred, still have not fully recovered 5 years later. So, and popular beaches can be closed. So, for example, the ruptured pipeline near Santa Barbara in California spilled more than 140,000 gallons of crude oil into the ocean. Birds and other wildlife were killed, and popular beaches remain closed for months as cleanup crews removed globs of food from sand and water. Mm. So these all have, of course, environmental negative kind of impacts, but from a strictly business point of view, these also have really bad effects on our economy, local and worldwide.
Yeah, so. Just jump in real quick. Also, what you're saying about the Deepwater Horizon spill or something, it seems like people gauge whether something is an issue or not based on whether it's in the news. So, like, obviously, if we don't hear about it, it must be, like, dealt with. But no, that's not how news works. They just
they just find something more interesting and go and hit on that. Like
no one really. There are very few articles where it's like, let's take a look back at this thing that happened 2 years ago. Like there's a few out there, but it's not really what people are looking for.
Well, I'm just always cracking up because, of course, a lot of my friends and family know I'm very invested in the oceans. So they send me articles from World Oceans Day like, oh my God, did you hear about this? I'm like, yeah, this happened like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
We're just talking about it now because it's relevant, because it's World Oceans Day. Like, yes, I knew about this. Did you know about this?
Yeah. It's like these things, like that's the word relevant is pretty accurate. It's like it's been relevant this entire time. but it just hasn't come to our attention if we're not
Yeah.
like immersed in that world.
It's just it's interesting how kind of something that I guess there must be something like this for me, but because I'm so invested in the oceans, to hear someone like just learn these things when this is something that I literally live,
Yeah.
it's interesting. It's interesting to see. Like, wow, people don't think about the oceans like 24/7.
Yeah.
Like, interesting. Didn't know that.
Yeah. Which is, I think, a good like reality check too, because a lot of times when I talk about like environmental issues, I'm like, I shouldn't even assume that, for example, like Monsanto is something that comes to everyone's attention.
Mhm.
And so again, you're very familiar with this, but like communicating like this type of stuff, communicating sustainability, science, whatever, is like hard or a challenge. It's like creating a website. Like there's so many details that you overlook.
Mhm.
Like, yeah. Yeah.
It's just, yeah, and I know it's something that I have a tendency to kind of take for granted, is that I took classes in this, and
Yeah.
like, yeah, it's interesting to take a step back and try to look at this from a different point of view, a different person's point of view. So,
Totally.
let's see. Let me pull this up. Oh, nope, I want to make it bigger. No, don't want to make it bigger. Let's see. Okay. Is this gonna work? Cool. Let's do this. Okay. Let me make this bigger. So, one of my favorite parts about World Ocean Day is it also gives a nice kind of perspective on art. So there's this one artist, I'm gonna botch his name, John Dalise. Hold on, let me look up how to properly spell it. Oh, nope, I can't. Hold on. John Dawson. So John Dawson is an Australian contemporary environmental artist. So he uses found objects, pretty much plastic bags from Australian beaches, for his work. And he's won quite a lot of prizes and a lot of grants for his work. So this is one of his pieces called Ocean and Earth, and all of these pieces are created from found plastic objects from the beaches that he visits. He also does recycled plastic bag art. So these are all plastic bag pieces that he found, and he puts into he kind of recreates, or he creates art out of garbage, essentially. And then he also, where is it? This is some of my favorite, is he takes driftwood and he reassembles it. So, and it's found driftwood objects in steel. So I love this one. I love driftwood, and I would love to think that I could do this, but I know I cannot. So that's one of my favorite things about World Ocean Day, is kind of taking, once again, a different perspective from the science that I always see. Let me see. Where is it? Oh, so this is his interpretation of Australia's Gold Coast. And you can see like the different pieces of plastic and the plastic bags and the plastic pieces that he, and if you think about it, this is four panels that are 1.24 meters by 64 centimeters each, and it's very closely put together. So how many pieces of plastic did he have to find to create this? It's absolutely crazy to me, but it's really nice to see garbage turned into something beautiful. So I love his work. I think it's fantastic. I would love to think I could make something nice like this, but I cannot.
You never know. Maybe your grad school plans will turn into art school plans.
I'm not patient. That's the thing. I'd love to think that I can like sit down and draw something, but one, I don't have the inherent skill, and two, I would just get frustrated and leave. I would honestly get frustrated and leave. So, and then the next thing that I want to show is actually a TED Talk. It is the first ever TED Talk filmed underwater, and I think that is freaking awesome. Freaking awesome. I posted this to the 10 by 2020 page, but if you haven't seen it, you need to. Let me make it big. Make you full screen.
I think it's great to like plugged into this world because then you know of all these cool videos to share.
What? Sorry?
Oh, it's cool that you're like plugged into,
Yeah, I love, honestly, the share screen on this is like the best thing in the world.
Yeah.
Because like I can't do it justice if I was to sit here and like describe.
Yeah.
Like I could not do it justice, especially because to me the oceans are so visual.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Like I could be like, yeah, it's really pretty and blue and underwater. Like that's such a bad description.
Yeah.
As a kid, I used to dream about the ocean. It was this wild place full of color and life, home to these alien-looking, fantastical creatures. I pictured big sharks ruling the food chain and saw graceful sea turtles dancing across coral reefs. As a marine biologist turned photographer, I've spent most of my career looking for places as magical as those I used to dream about when I was little. As you can see, I began exploring bodies of water at a fairly young age, but the first time I truly went underwater, I was about 10 years old. And I can still vividly remember furiously finning to reach this old, encrusted canyon in the shallow coral reef. When I finally managed to grab hold of it, I looked up, and I was instantly surrounded by fish in all colors of the rainbow. That was the day I fell in love with the ocean. In my 40 years on this planet, I've had the great privilege to explore some of its most incredible seascapes for National Geographic magazine and the Save Our Seas Foundation. I photographed everything from really, really big sharks to dainty ones that fit in the palm of your hand. I've smelled the fishy breath of humpback whales feeding just feet away from you in the cold seas of Canada's Great Bear Rainforest. And I've been privy to the mating rituals of green sea turtles in the Mozambique Channel. Everyone on this planet affects and is affected by the ocean. And the pristine seas I used to dream of as a child are becoming harder and harder to find. They're becoming more compressed and more threatened. As we humans continue to maintain our role as the leading predator on Earth, I've witnessed and photographed many of these ripple effects firsthand. For a long time, I thought I had to shock my audience out of their indifference with disturbing images. And while this approach has merits, I have come full circle. I believe that the best way for me to affect change is to sell love. I guess I'm a matchmaker of sorts, and as a photographer, I have the rare opportunity to reveal animals and entire ecosystems that lie hidden beneath the ocean's surface. You can't love something and become a champion for it if you don't know it exists. Uncovering this, that is the power of conservation photography. I've visited hundreds of marine locations, but there are a handful of seascapes that have touched me incredibly deeply. The first time I experienced that kind of high was about 10 years ago, off South Africa's rugged wild coast. And every June and July, enormous shoals of sardines travel northwards in a mass migration we call the sardine run. And boy, do those fish have good reason to run. In hot pursuit are hordes of hungry and agile predators. Common dolphins hunt together and they can separate some of the sardines from the main shoal when they create bait balls. They drive and trap the fish upward against the ocean surface, and then they rush in to dine on this pulsating and movable feast. Close behind are sharks. Now, most people believe that sharks and dolphins are these mortal enemies, but during the sardine run, they actually coexist. In fact, dolphins actually help sharks feed more effectively. Without dolphins, bait balls are more dispersed, and sharks often end up with what I call a sardine donut, or a mouthful of water. Now, while I've had a few spicy moments with sharks on the sardine run, I know they don't see me as prey. However, I get bumped and tail slapped just like any other guest at this rowdy banquet. From the shores of Africa, we travel east across the vastness that is the Indian Ocean to the Maldives, a archipelago of coral islands. And during the stormy southwest monsoon, manta rays from all across the archipelago travel to a tiny speck bar atoll called Hanifar. Armies of crustaceans, most no bigger than the size of your pupils, are the mainstay of the manta ray's diet. When plankton concentrations become patchy, manta rays feed alone, and they somersault themselves backwards again and again, very much like a puppy chasing its own tail. However, when plankton densities increase, the mantas line up head to tail to form these long feeding chains. And any tasty morsel that escapes the first or second manta line is surely to be gobbled up by the next, or the one after. As plankton levels peak in the bay, the mantas swim closer and closer together in a unique behavior we call cyclone feeding. And as they swirl in tight formation, this multi-stacked column of mantas creates its own vortex, sucking in and delivering the plankton right into the mantas' cavernous mouths. The experience of diving amongst such masses of hundreds of rays is truly unforgettable. When I first photographed Hanifar, the site enjoyed no protection and was threatened by development. And working with NGOs like the Manta Trust, my images eventually helped Hanifar become a marine protected area. Now, fishermen from neighboring islands, they once hunted these manta rays to make traditional drums from their skins. Today, they are the most ardent conservation champions, and manta rays earn the Maldivian economy in excess of $8 million every single year. I've always wanted to travel back in time to an era where maps were mostly blank or they read, there be dragons. And to date, the closest I've come is visiting remote atolls in the Western Indian Ocean. Far, far away from shipping lanes and fishing fleets, diving into these waters is a poignant reminder of what our oceans once looked like. Very few people have heard of Basasta, India, a tiny speck of coral in the Mozambique Channel. Its reef forms a protective outer barrier, and the inner lagoon is a nursery ground for Galapagos sharks. Now, these sharks are anything but shy, even during the day. I had a bit of a hunch that they would be even bolder and more abundant at night. Never before have I encountered so many sharks on a single coral outcrop. Capturing and sharing moments like this, that reminds me why I chose my path. Earlier this year, I was on assignment for National Geographic magazine in Baja California. And about halfway down the peninsula on the Pacific side, lies San Ignacio Lagoon. a critical calving ground for gray whales. For 100 years, this coast was the scene of a wholesale slaughter where more than 20,000 gray whales were killed, leaving only a few hundred survivors. Today, the descendants of these same whales nudge their youngsters to the surface to play and even interact with us. This species truly has made a remarkable comeback. Now, on the other side of the peninsula lies Cabo Pulmo, a sleepy fishing village. Decades of overfishing had brought them close to collapse. In 1995, local fishermen convinced the authorities to proclaim their waters a marine reserve. But what happened next was, nothing short of miraculous. In 2005, after only a single decade of protection, scientists measured the largest recovery of fish ever recorded. But don't take my word for it. Come with me. On a single breath, swim with me in deep into one of the largest and densest schools of fish I have ever encountered. We all have the ability to be creators of hope, and through my photography, I want to pass on the message that it is not too late for our oceans. In particular, I want to focus on nature's resilience in the face of 7.3 billion people. My hope is that in the future, I will have to search much, much harder to make photographs like this, while creating images that showcase our respectful coexistence with the ocean. Those will hopefully become an everyday occurrence for me. To thrive and survive in my profession, you really have to be a hopeless optimist. And I always operate on the assumption that the next great picture that will affect change is right around the corner, behind the next coral head, inside the next lagoon, or possibly in the one after it.
That was he's so like
He's first his voice is fantastic.
yeah.
I
love
need
his
him to read me a
metaphors.
story. And he's just like, it's so interesting that he's marine biologist turned photographer.
Yeah.
I know a lot of photographers turn marine biologists or marine biologists with a passion for photography, but he turned that into his job, his inspiration. And some of his images are just, all of his images are stunning, but the one with the manta rays and the formation that they put themselves in to feed is just out of this world. And it's so inspiring to hear that his images helped form an MPA, and that the people who once used the manta rays as a source of income and a source of cultural identity are now some of their biggest kind of supporters. So that was absolutely amazing to me.
Yeah, I also love how he was very, very optimistic and hopeful. He was yeah, I forget what he said, but he framed it at the end this is not a dire situation. It's serious and pressing, but can turn things around. So
yeah, and it's also just interesting that kind of the way that it was filmed, he was on location, and
yeah.
it was nice. It was nice to see. I feel like that was very true to who he is, and his message is, I'm here now, this is what I'm doing.
Yeah. It was funny not seeing that TED stage.
Yeah. And the lighting and having the audience, it was very serene. So I really enjoyed kind of the serenity.
Yeah, what was the talk called again?
What? Sorry?
What was the talk called?
Hold on. Let me open
I'll
it.
include it in the materials.
Let me pull it up. It's called Dive into an Ocean Photographer's World.
Mm.
And that was Thomas Pashak.
Okay.
Which I might have just botched his name, but you know. I feel like I need to preface anytime I pronounce a place or someone's name that I'm not sure of. Like, maybe. I probably just botched how you say that. Let's see. Let me pull up the next thing.
I was also just thinking, like, TED is
Mhm.
so influential.
Yeah.
Everybody knows TED.
Like, seriously, it's and like I think it's also just such a great concept that like if you're interested in something, chances are there's a TED talk about it in some language or somewhere.
Oh,
And like it's nice that you can almost self-learn and self-teach from them.
yeah. Did you see and the TEDx events are great. Like LJ
Yeah.
did one.
I saw that's like and it's such a great like it's such a great idea.
Have you
I wish I
considered
came up with the idea of TED Talk sometimes. Like
I feel like you'd be a fantastic TED talker.
I did a TED Talk
Oh,
last year. I don't yeah.
was it on
I
oceans by chance?
It actually wasn't. It was for Ted's Day of Women.
Oh,
So mine was all about being a young female in sciences and kind of pretty much at some point in should I just show it? It's on
I think that you know what I was about to say. Like, you know, we've seen a couple great male artists. You know, like what are some key women doing in this aspect? And I think this fits right in.
oh gosh.
When was the last time you watched yourself?
I honestly have only watched it once.
Oh wow, you have a healthy
I have only watched it once because I sound so very nervous to me.
Oh.
But
When
yeah,
nation
hold
comes
on.
together.
So this was filmed in May of last year for the TED Day of Women, which was happening all over the world on the main stage of TED, but also on like local places all around. Don't mind the ad. By the way, I'm not getting any money from the ads. just as an FYI.
Oh darn, I would have just kept like refreshing to give you money.
Hi, everybody. So, I've always known that I wanted to go into the sciences. And I know this. I don't know how to work this. Oh, there we go. Because I wrote it in my 5th grade yearbook. See, once I realized that being the pink Power Ranger wasn't going to work out, I decided to go with what I liked, which was hands-on learning, which was a lot of visual. And in 5th grade, that meant that I liked science. I never knew that it wasn't normal for a girl to like science because when I got into middle school, my friends were more into Britney Spears and Rihanna, but I was more interested in Jane Goodall and Marie Curie, and that's just how it was. It didn't win me popularity points, but it was what I was interested in, and it was what I was passionate about. So when I got into high school, I decided that I wanted to take every science class that my education could possibly allow, because science, it's so broad. What science would I want? So I took bio, I took AP bio, I took AP Environmental. And in my mind, this was good. But it wasn't until I took my AP Environmental class that it really clicked. See, I was in my full-scale teenage rebellion, blue hair, punk rock music, trying to stay out late, which never really worked. And I really needed to find somewhere to funnel my passion. And it took about 12 minutes into my AP Environmental class until I realized this was it. Because see, the environment needed a fighter. The ocean can't talk, our soil can't talk, the atmosphere can't talk. So I decided I wanted to be that voice. And so when I applied to schools, I applied as a multitude of environmental disciplines. And I got into my top choice school, which is here. And I got in and I decided to be a coastal environmental science major because I'd always loved the ocean. I thought it meant that I'd be spending all my day at the beach, which didn't exactly work out that way, but I still get to go to the beach often. And I decided that this is what I wanted to do with my life. And it was in my freshman year, in my second semester, when I was in my freshman 102 class, which is meant to broaden your interest. And I was talking to another student, and he made this comment at me. Oh, really? You're in sciences? Well, you better take every opportunity that you get, because there's not a lot of opportunities for women in science. And I kind of wrote it off, because as far as I knew, I only had really female role models. I had Rachel Carson. I had my AP Environmental teacher, Miss Dower. So I just kind of was like, oh, okay. But that stuck with me, that there weren't going to be enough opportunities for me in science. I had better grab anyone that I could possibly get. My program has a blog, and this came up October 14th of 2014. It was my brother's birthday. They needed volunteers in a soil lab. I'm coastal sciences. That's pretty much the opposite of soil. But I knew that an opportunity was still an opportunity. So I wrote to the professor, offered my volunteer skills. She needed someone to water. I know water. I know what a cup is. I could take a cup and put it on a couple of 100 bins. Cool. I fell in love with this lab. Earthworm ecotoxicology. If you had told 5th grade me that by the time I got into college, I was still playing with worms, I probably would have thought you were mental, but I also probably would have agreed with you, because I liked worms then and I still like them now. See, this lab, what turned into a volunteer opportunity, then turned into me being asked to be a team leader, which meant that I was more in charge. I got to help with the writing process. I got to present my research. And that just made my love even more. And this past year, I actually got to see my project start to finish. It went from being that really, really weird piece of paper with scribblings from my chemistry notebook to being set up in front of me. I got to see the process go from the early stages to being in front of me, to physically holding the soil that I was going to be working with. Because in this lab, we studied the effects of hazardous materials on soil and earthworm health. And the thing is that the stuff that we work with the most, it's this thing called Roundup. It's an herbicide. It's the most popular herbicide, though, in both the agricultural district and the domestic district, which is a really, really fancy way of saying that any one of you can go to Home Depot, you can go to Lowe's, and you can buy it. And you could spray it however you want. Because I'm going to be honest, I don't read directions. I don't read terms and conditions. I probably sold my soul to Apple more than once in my lifetime. So you can go and spray it however you want, which isn't necessarily good. Because here's the thing. If you don't keep your soil healthy, how do you expect your plants to grow? Think of all the food that you get from the ground. For all my meat eaters out there, your meat is eating food from the ground too. And this thing that's supposed to help our soil, it ends up hurting it. Because what I wanted to look at was how does it affect the microbes in the soil, the stuff that keeps it healthy. And what we found this past year, it drops off significantly its first application. And while we don't see a decrease in worm health, we're not sure if that's actually because it doesn't affect the worms, or if the worms are eating that Roundup and it's getting fatter because of this. But as I know, I can eat as many donuts I want, and I could weigh a lot, but it doesn't mean I'm getting the nutrients that I need. And I get to work with so many fantastic people. Dr. Sharon Cochran, who is the PI in this lab. I get to work with Dr. Heidi Huttner. I get to work with Ginny Clancy, who's in the audience right now. And I get to work with an amazing team of entirely undergraduates. When was the last time you guys heard of an entirely undergraduate-run lab? Because apparently there aren't enough opportunities for undergraduates, or apparently there's not enough opportunities for women in science. This lab defies it all. And we became really interesting in March, because the stuff that we use, Roundup, probably carcinogenic by the World Health Organization. This is the stuff that you guys can buy at Home Depot and Lowe's. This is the stuff for Roundup resistant crops. It's on your apples, it's on your corn, it's everywhere. For Long Island, it's in the Peconic Bay, it's in our groundwater because we spray it so much. And that's why we focus on it. But my research has led to so many other opportunities. I'm standing in one right now. And it made me realize how lucky I was that I had a female mentor, that I had female role models in the sciences. Because I never knew that wasn't usual. It's like one of those things, you don't know how lucky you are until you don't have it anymore. Well, I've had it all my life. And I realized that other people didn't have that. So what I want to do is I want to start outreach programs. I go to schools, I talk about this research. I talk about marine pollution, more related to my major. I get to go to Miller Place High School and talk to their environmental club, not only about my research that I'm doing now, but also about the different opportunities that they can take about undergraduate research. I got to go to Riverhead Charter School and talk about marine pollution, and they got to go and see what we put in our oceans. They got to build artwork out of it to try to turn something gross and disgusting into something beautiful. I'm doing this right now. I'm talking to you guys. I did FameLab, an international competition in communicating science. Because if this is my new fiery passion, I want to be able to do it well. I want to be able to communicate my maybe tough ideas to people who might not understand it, but without dumbing it down. Because that's part of the problem now. We dumb stuff down because we think that kids or women or anyone can't understand it. I think you guys are a lot smarter than that. I think you understood everything I said. I think that we have to give people the option to understand what we're saying. It's a right to know. Everyone here has the right to know what you might be eating. It's probably carcinogenic, according to the World Health Organization. This is my momentum. I want to see the momentum of having young girls, young guys, people of every age to understand science. To be able to stand here where I am right now and to communicate just as well. That's what I think that we need for the future. Hopefully it'll become true, I don't know. But at the end of every single presentation I do, I repeat that somewhat sexist comment that was given to me. But of course I change it a little bit. Take every opportunity that's ever presented to you, apply to anything. What's it gonna waste? 30 minutes of your time? If there's an application fee, maybe $20. But by applying to these things, by taking every opportunity, no matter how weird or how off topic it might be, that opportunity might just change your life. I'm living proof of that. Thank you.
Oh, Emily, that was amazing.
It was a fun experience. I totally suggest everyone do it. It's probably, honestly, it was the second most nerve-wracking thing I've ever done, right after giving a speech at the UN.
That's awesome.
That was a good kind of prequel, I guess you could call it, before I even know about the Ocean's Prize.
Oh,
A good
you're
prequel.
right up for it. That reminds me of this article in the National Geographic. I just posted it in the group chat, but it's basically like, it shows how there's 6 women scientists that we don't like give proper credit to, the whole Watson and Crick,
Yeah.
Rosalind Franklin, and that kind of stuff. So I'm not sure if you've seen this before, but it just reminded me of this your talk.
There's still on topic, there's this like Etsy shop who I've bought a lot of stuff from, and I've actually met the shop owners.
Oh wow.
And they have a line of bracelets and charms dedicated to women scientists. So I have a bracelet, a Marie Curie themed bracelet.
That's amazing.
It has a drawn portrait of Marie Curie. It has a little gemstone the same color as curium, which is the element named after her. It has a little atom, and it has a little microscope. So, yeah.
That's
I
amazing.
love, I absolutely love seeing women and scientists and kind of representing as best as I can.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to pull up there. Here we go. And they have a ton of different like scientists, especially women in science. So I'll send it to you in the group chat because like their stuff is totally adorable. It's bad. Like, it's bad. It's bad how much I love their stuff.
Studios, even the name.
Right? They do a lot of different things. They do fandoms, they do TV shows, they do custom work, but yeah, they have just a lot of like women scientists who I was really surprised when I was looking at them and I saw their names. I was like, I didn't even know like these people existed. So like they have one pendant of this woman named Caroline Herschel. She was the first woman to receive a salary for her scientific work.
Oh wow.
She discovered 8 comets and was one of the first women admitted to the Royal Astronomical Society, which awarded her a gold medal. I had no idea who this person was. And I was like, I was mad at myself. I pride myself on knowing a lot of women scientists, but I didn't know who she was. Dorothy Hodgkin was another one that I saw at their shop. And she worked with X-ray crystallography.
Yeah.
And I didn't know her. I was like, I was mad. I was mad at myself. So it's just amazing how like essentially people can try to write out like 50% of the population just based on their gender.
Yeah.
Like you're looking for solutions, but God forbid that solution comes from a woman. Like how do you expect to get anywhere when you're discounting 50% of the population? Like, that's crazy to me.
Wow.
Yeah. So if you ever need any gifts, totally suggest, especially for like a geeky scientist.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Optimistical Studios is amazing. So,
Sure. Yeah, I also had like a very, very important female AP bio teacher that just turned my world upside down and like, oh my goodness.
it was so crazy to me that like hearing like, oh, well, I never really had any like female scientist role models. My science teacher in 6th grade was a female. My science teacher in 7th grade was a female. My science teacher in 9th grade was a female. Like it was one of those things that was unbeknownst to me. So it was just like, what? You don't female scientists? Like, is this like the 1930s or something?
Yeah.
We can wear pants now too. This just in. Like, Fun concept.
Oh my god.
Got a little, yeah. And then, so kind of moving on, because the theme of this is summer seas. I know a lot of people are visiting the beaches this time of year, and I just kind of wanted to be a mom for a second and recount out the safety tips from the American Red Cross on beach safety, because every year, unfortunately, you do read that people get stuck in rip currents and kind of things like that. So for anyone who doesn't know, a rip current is a sudden kind of break in the sand, so water pulls outwards, and you can kind of feel yourself being sucked out to sea. The first and foremost thing, which like they tell you to do, and it's going to be hard, is stay calm and don't fight the current. What you want to do is swim parallel to the shore until you are out of the current, and once you feel, and you will be able to feel when you're out of it, because it'll be like something is sucking you out to sea and then nothing. Once you are free, turn and swim towards the shore. If you're unable to swim towards the shore, float or tread water until you're free of the rip current, and then try to head back. Or if you're too tired, make a lot of noise, wave your hands, call for help, and the lifeguard will see you. They find that rip currents often exist near piers and jetties, so kind of try to avoid swimming near those. If you see someone who seems to be in distress, they suggest you don't do the hero thing and run out, because then you might be swept into the current as well. Look for a lifeguard, call 911, look for something that can float, whether it's a life jacket, a cooler, an inflatable ball, one of those weird like pool floats, and kind of be mindful of the beach kind of hazards that are listed. You'll see a lot of warning flags, or ask a lifeguard about beach conditions or water conditions and mind those. So you could be swimming. I know that the beach I usually go to has a green flag and a green flag, and you have to only swim between the green flags. And like it's there for a reason. It's there for a reason. So when I was younger, I would always try to like sneak outside of the green zone, and oh, so dangerous. But I kind of now know that it is there for a reason. And then some other beach safety tips that they give you. If you have a young child or an inexperienced swimmer, have them wear a Coast Guard approved life jacket. Those like flotation devices that you can buy at Target are there for fun and not to save your life. Obviously. Don't dive head first. Make sure that you protect your neck. Check for depth and obstructions. Don't dive into rocks. Fun fact. Wave action can cause a loss of footing, which is pretty much saying you could be knocked down by waves. So even if you're in shallow water, be careful. And keep a lookout for aquatic life. Not only is that for your safety, but also for the marine animals' safety as well. Jellyfish, don't touch them. They'll sting you. It's not pleasant. If you do happen to see some sort of marine life in distress, a lot of lifeguards will have the number of a local organization that will help. Don't approach it, don't touch it, because that can kind of cause more damage than good. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration has kind of like a master list of how to report a stranded or beached marine animal. And it could be anything from like a seal to an otter to dolphins. Kind of a lot of people just think of it as like beached whales because that's what we hear about in the news, but the chance of you going down to like the Jersey Shore and discovering a beached whale or I can say statistically slim to none. But I know that, for example, there's this organization in Long Island called the Riverhead Foundation, and one of the things that they do is kind of marine rescue. So not only will they help kind of with a beached turtle or seal, but they also are a rehabilitation center as well. So they're like a really great organization. I've worked with them a couple of different times, but a lot of people, as I think maybe it was in the last webinar or the one before, there was the video circulating around of people passing around like a baby dolphin, I think, and the baby dolphin ended up perishing. Don't touch it. Imagine if you were beached, if you were scared. Would you want someone picking you up and passing you around to your friends? Like, no, just, it seems like it would be like common knowledge, but yeah.
It's
Like, don't
a little hard to understand.
don't touch the wildlife. Like, you might be doing more harm than good. So leave it to the professionals.
Yeah, I'm like wondering if we didn't like develop the way we did and we were in like constant interaction with wildlife, I wonder if we'd like act differently around them, like if we know to leave them alone, because I feel like because we grow up like, you know, in isolation from it, when we see it we're like, oh my gosh, what is this? But I wonder what like instinct does to you when you see a wild animal.
Well, it's also like, and I understand if you see an animal and it seems to be in distress, like you will probably want to help it, and in some way, like I'm sure in a lot of cases people think that they're helping the animal, but you kind of have to like stop, take a step back, and kind of like leave it to the professionals, because they know better than like we do. So yeah, yep. And always wear sunscreen. That's the last piece of beach advice. Reapply every 80 minutes if you're in the water, every like 100 minutes if you're not in the water. I personally don't think anything like above an SPF 50, I think they found, does like the same. I saw like an SPF like 100 in the store the other day. Like, that's gonna make you like whiter than you were before. It's literally gonna bleach you. Like, careful. Maybe don't. So, my mom is like insane about sunscreen. So we have like gallons. I can honestly say we have gallons of sunscreen in my house, which is good. I never get burned. Like, she chases me with it like every time I try to go out.
That's so funny.
Oh my gosh. But you know, it's a real, getting a sunburn apparently hurts. I've gotten like sunburn once in my life, so.
Oh, really? Good for you.
Yeah, I got like really lucky with the Sicilian skin.
Yeah.
Like, I pretty much just tan. I don't really burn.
Wow.
Like a lot of my friends burn, so
Yeah.
I've seen it.
Yeah.
It's scary. I've seen it and I don't like it. I don't like it. And then I guess the last thing that I wanted to bring up, I love giving like book suggestions and book reviews. So the book that I finished reading just recently was Let There Be Water.
Okay.
And it's all about Israel's solution for a water-starved world. So I actually picked this up after visiting the Salad Trail. And the person who wrote it is a activist, writer, and lawyer, and co-founder of a lot of different companies. And so he kind of is all for technological innovation applied to partnership with government and industry. And it's kind of a prediction of the global water crisis. So it's looking at Israel because Israel is doing a lot with desalination of water and reusing water, and like kind of a good perspective on national water system. So this is looking more at like drinking water than oceans. But it was very, very interesting. Let me see what I wanted to show. I had it marked, and then of course my mark went out. Where is it? Okay. So here's like a list of different things that Israel does in pursuit of kind of keeping their water crisis to a minimum. Discourage landscaping of parks or homes that consumes fresh water. They educate their school children on the value of water conservation. They price out their water that encourage efficiency. They use a lot of drip irrigation for their agriculture. They've been doing experiments with ideas to reduce evaporation of water. They demand that all appliances be hyper water efficient. So it's not just kind of scientific based approaches, but it's a lot of mixing science and policy, education. Really, like, everyone does their part, whether you are a school teacher or a farmer, or you work in a building, or like you're building a house, or you're a landscaper. Everyone has to do their part. And I think that's really like amazing, because we saw California's water crisis, which is like apparently over, or like starting to get over, but we'll see. So I definitely suggest it. I got really lucky and got an advanced reader's edition. So it is now currently on sale, but my copy is a little bit, this is an uncorrected version of the book, whatever that means. So there might be some changes, but it's a really interesting read. And what's nice is that he does not write like a scientist. He writes like a normal person.
That's helpful.
Yeah, definitely. So that's all I have. Do you have any questions, comments?
No, that was fantastic. I love the range of topics in this webinar, like everything from ecotourism to women in science. And I love the book recommendation. It also ties into just like international relations issues.
Yeah.
Definitely a big hot topic. So yeah, I'll share a little blog recap with all you mentioned a lot of great resources, a lot of artists. And we have the peace webinar coming up in a few minutes, so that's exciting. But thank you again.
No problem.
As always, bringing all this information and insight to the webinars. I love the videos that you show. They're always like relevant. You know, you can show any video, but to have it actually be...
You can show any video but a BuzzFeed video.
Yep.
Don't show BuzzFeed videos. They'll find you.
That one was so cool, but...
It was so cool, but like...
So, it was great. Yeah, so thank you. I'll be posting this recording for others to catch up on if they're asleep or at like another commitment. And yeah, we'll see you next time.
Yep.
Great. Have a good weekend, Emily.
Have a good one.
Bye.